This is a fern. Fern is the symbol of New Zealand rugby and soccer. And so the symbol is emblazoned onto the jerseys of every player that takes the field in the name of their country. The national team for soccer and for women's in New Zealand are affectionately known as the Lady Ferns. Even the men's national team, known as the All Whites, bear this same symbol on the breast of their shirts when they take to the field. The fern is a plant known for its high durability and ability to withstand harsh conditions, everything from the bitter cold of winter to the extreme humidity of summer. And it is so appropriate that this is the symbol of New Zealand football, considering in the last decade New Zealand have entered the world stage as a markedly improved side, playing a very physical, technical style of football that have shown them to be difficult to defeat against opponents of vast superior quality. Welcome to my Confederations Cup team profile review of New Zealand. New Zealand, beautiful country. Never been there. Always wanted to. Fell in love with it after watching The Lord of the Rings. Uh, I hope one day to go there. And also a country of underdogs. And who doesn't love a good underdog in any sports tournament, especially in football? Here, I want to dive into the New Zealand national team, the players, the lineups that Coach Anthony Hudson has for this summer, give a sort of analysis on the current state of their national team, what they have to do to come out of this group in the Confederations Cup, and ultimately where I think they will finish. So to jump right in, the 23-man roster for the New Zealand national team this summer, the Confederations Cup in Russia 2017, are goalkeepers Stefan Marinovic, Tamati Williams, and Glenn Moss. Defenders Andrew Durante, Thomas Doyle, Storm Rout, Michael Boxall, Kip Colvey, Temi Zamopoulos, Dalton Wayne, Sam Brotherton, Tommy Smith, Dane Ingham, midfielders Bill Toiloma, Clayton Lewis, Michael McGlinchey, Ryan Thomas, Marco Rojas, Alex Ruffer, and forwards Chris Wood, Monty Patterson, Shane Smeltz, and Costa Barbarosis. The first thing that stands out to me in looking at this squad is the fact that a slight majority of New Zealand's national side play abroad in international clubs. And this is sort of a huge change from what it used to be the story for New Zealand football in the past, where a lot of its own players were homegrown. They played domestically in the New Zealand A League. And this, to me, sort of highlights that New Zealand is now extending its branches and sending out its youth players to get international foreign experience playing in much better quality clubs at a higher level. And I think looking at this roster and after doing a little bit of research and from what I know of New Zealand's most recent history in international tournaments, the player here that stands out to me that I think will play an important role in guiding this team through the group stages is veteran striker Shane Smeltz. He has been on the New Zealand national side for well over 12, 13 years now. And I think that he provides a much needed seasoned veterancy to this young team, in my opinion. And it's going to be interesting to see how he wears the captain's armband and how he goes about guiding his team through the three games of this group stage. To me, as far as creating attacking options up front, because we know New Zealand, in order to get through, they cannot rely on three draws, as they did at the 2010 World Cup, where they drew all their games and exited in the group stage. The absolutely pivotal playmakers here, in my opinion, are Marco Rojas and Chris Wood. Chris Wood plays for Leeds United in the Premier League, and Marcos Rojo plays for Melbourne Victory, an Australian club, one of the best clubs in Australian football. And looking at World Cup qualifiers and looking at the role that these two players that I just named played, um, they really are the teeth of New Zealand's attack and the goals that they create moving forward. And I think here that The best strategy that Coach Anthony Hudson can go about doing this is to play a 5-3-2 formation. I think New Zealand is at its best in a 5-3-2. A 5-3-2 puts a stronger emphasis on defense, but you still have two reliable forwards up front. In mapping out New Zealand's path in this group, I try to come up with a realistic scenario of what New Zealand can do to get through. And I'm not willing to write them off. After what they did in the last few international tournaments that they have been a part of, they have proven themselves to be a side that is capable of getting upset results. In the 2010 World Cup, the first World Cup New Zealand came back to after almost 30 years in the wilderness, they pushed defending world champions Italy to a 1-1 draw. They could have won it with a Chris Wood strike in the 81st minute that was just wide of target. That would have been an absolutely sensational upset, giving them the 2-1 victory. They were the only team, the only country in the 2010 World Cup that went undefeated. They were also so-called the weakest side who entered that tournament. So if that's not ironic, I don't know what is. They exited the tournament with three points from three draws, not losing a single game, but gaining a whole lot of international respect and pride and dignity. In this group with Russia, Mexico, and Portugal, the most realistic map out I can see New Zealand surviving this group would be to shock the host nation in the opening game, because I do think that their best chance of getting a win in this group is against the host nation, Russia. And you think, well, how's that possible? Russia's going to have the home crowd behind them. They're going to be very motivated to go out and get the result. They have to get this. This is a must win for them in the opening game. But Russia has been very disappointing in recent tournaments. And they failed to advance out of every major tournament group stage that they've been a part of, going back to Euro 2008, when the last time where they did advance out of the group stage. So I think New Zealand absolutely has to get a result in that opening game to stay alive, to stay in contention, because their schedule from that point on gets a lot harder against Mexico and Portugal. So even a draw, I think, would be ideal for them. And I think Coach Anthony Hudson knows this. From there, if they get a draw against Russia or maybe a surprise win, they would have to get they would have to pick at least another point from their matches against Mexico and Portugal, which is a very tall order considering the gap in quality between New Zealand and the Mexicans and the Portuguese. So, in the absolute best case scenario for New Zealand, my results for them in this group are a shock victory over Russia in the opening game, a draw against Mexico, and a loss against Portugal. 4 points from a win, a tie, and a loss to get them through, depending on the results of the other teams in the groups. So their fate would not be entirely in their hands. A lot of things have to click together for New Zealand to get out of this group. And it's a very tall order, to be honest. But New Zealand do have one thing going for them, and that they are taking this tournament as seriously as any other side participating. New Zealand is a side who doesn't qualify for many international competitions. So when they do, for example, when Auckland City, their most successful club, reaches the Club World Cup, that for them is the most important event of the year because they're playing against the best sides in the world. So you look at sides like Germany, who are not even sending their best team, uh, Cameroon, Chile, Australia, Russia, Mexico, a Mexican team that has to balance out three different kinds of competition this summer with the Gold Cup, the Confederations Cup, and World Cup qualifying. You have to think that this is one advantage that New Zealand has, is that they can afford to send their best squad to this tournament because they don't have any other focus on the summer. There's just one direct goal. It is the Confederations Cup. It is putting on the best performance they can, and it is doing their best to survive this group. So you have to think that Mexico is not going to be entirely focused on this group. Uh, Germany sure as hell is not, as Joachim Low has admitted that he is not bringing. He's bringing a squad entirely of youngsters. So there's that added motivation to New Zealand to perform well, make a good accounting of themselves in this tournament. as Coach Anthony Hudson has said numerous times in interviews. Um, and I just think that New Zealand is a side that should be underestimated at your own peril. Uh, this is a team that I think is desperate to prove that previous performances, including that of the 2010 World Cup, were not merely flukes. They want to continue on the progress they've made over the last decade. One reason why I think the New Zealand men's national soccer team and Australia sort of reminds me of the U.S. is because of the familiar style of play that all three teams adopt. New Zealand is a side that is not very loaded in a lot of talent. They get the results based on tactics, smart, pragmatic approach to each game, concise. And the United States is also a team that does not have a lot of young talent in comparison to that of the rest of the world and major European and South American powers. Um, we, the United States, is a team that it's hard to describe. We are the sum of our parts are better than our individual pieces. The sum of our parts are better than our individual pieces. We got to the semifinals of the Copa America last year strictly and entirely on smart tactics, not through talent. And while the United States, in my opinion, is much more talented than New Zealand and Australia, um, I sort of see New Zealand as a young United States team, as sort of a prototype for where the U.S. was back in the late 90s, early 2000s when we were still growing. So I sympathize a lot with this New Zealand team. I think they are improving. I think they really need to leave Oceania. They really need to join Asia in order to play stiffer competition in order to get better. They didn't do what Australia did 10 years ago in 2007 by moving to Asia. And since then, Australia has become a better team. Uh, New Zealand also benefits from the fact that they are not in the toughest group of this Confederations Cup. If they were with Cameroon, Germany, Chile, Australia, I would give them no chance of coming through. But because of the fact they are playing a host nation that has been very disappointing in recent years, they are playing a Mexican side that may have different its eyes somewhere else. They're in with a shot here. I think New Zealand is in with a chance to come out of this group. Um, I have no doubt they're going to give it their all because they have nothing else this summer to really set a goal for to focus on. And oh, I forgot to give my potential surprise player. Well, for each team in this tournament, I'm doing a potential surprise player, that a breakout star, so to speak. I picked Bill Toyluma of Olympique de Marseille. He plays in the French league for Olympique de Marseille. He's a young guy, 22 years old. I've seen YouTube highlights of him. He is a very promising figure. Potentially, he will have a role to play in the coming years for New Zealand, similar to that of the role that Chris Wood plays for now. I think he is a brilliant young man. He is supremely talented, and if he plays his cards right, plays for a better club in Europe as the years go on, I think he can become better and he become a valuable asset for his national team. So the potential breakout star for New Zealand this tournament, I think, is Bill Toyloma. He's 22 years old. Go look him up. Uh, so considering that, I have to give a projection of where New Zealand will finish. So in this group, first, second, third, fourth, where is New Zealand going to finish in this tournament? Fourth. I think New Zealand will finish in fourth in this tournament, um, just because I think the other sides are going to be too strong for them. Uh, I think that playing against the European champions is going to be the hardest game in the group for New Zealand. And Mexico, despite the fact that they have other focuses this summer in addition to the Confederations Cup, I just feel that you look at Mexico and their recent results against New Zealand, they absolutely thrashed them going back to 2014 World Cup qualifying. And you don't want to have to play the host nation in the opening game, although it is a great honor and it gains international traction and attention for the tournament itself. Playing against the host nation with a point to prove to its home fans, it's not a position that you want to be in. And I just think these will be New Zealand's shortcomings. I'm not underestimating them. In fact, I'm giving them a better chance that most people are giving them. A lot of people don't think they're going to get a single point from this group. A lot of them think it's going to be 3 games, 3 losses out. Um, no, I don't think so. I think New Zealand is going to get a point here. I do think New Zealand is going to at least draw one of their games. And I think that game is going to come against Mexico. I like to make bold predictions. I like to make fun predictions here. I think that New Zealand is going to score goals in this tournament. They're not going to get shut out in every game. And I think they're going to steal a point. They're going to steal a point. They're going to get revenge against Mexico for wiping them out and knocking them out of 2014 World Cup qualifying contention. They lost 9-3 on aggregate, I believe. So I think New Zealand's going to get a little bit of revenge here. I think they're going to steal a point off a Mexican side that only has one eye on this tournament. So, but I do think ultimately they will finish in last place in this group, but they will do themselves a great service and they will make their fans very proud. So I think New Zealand's going to finish in fourth, but they'll get a point. They'll get a point.